my job has been sort of two parts. One is as an educator, because I used to direct the education program for coastal rivers, and the other part is working with volunteers. It doesn't really matter the age. If they make their own discoveries, they get very intrigued with whatever it is, even if it's just for a few moments. But it feels like a deeper connection over time is probably going to happen. So, like, I've had volunteers go out on the boat and they're doing water monitoring, but they see something that looks a little different. Suddenly the water looks very turbid, where, 2 weeks ago it didn't look turbid. It's the discovery itself that, pulls people in a little bit, makes them engage with whatever is going on in the environment that day, and encourages them to reach out and wondering, what does that mean? What does that mean for the oysters that are in the river there? I have been doing my oyster gardening program and teaching people, like in April and May, talking to them about how, what the oysters need to live, and what the limiting factors are for oysters, especially when they reproduce. pH is very important. So if the pH is such that they can't pull calcium carbonate out of the water and create their own shell, then they don't survive. And the pH is can be in part impacted by the level of nitrogen in the water, and nitrogen can come off the landscape, and nitrogen could come in terms of fertilizer. It could come from just septic leach field scenarios that are not doing a good job of filtering before it gets to the water's edge. Oysters don't grow if they can't put on shell, and it makes perfect sense. And there's a period of time when they're very small spat that they need to be able to put the shell on, or they simply won't develop. What happened was there was a number of us who were in community water quality monitoring groups along the coast that realized we really had all these different engaged citizen community volunteer monitoring groups that were collecting all kinds of data related to the problems and concerns in their communities. So, and if we had something that was like an input, some kind of pollutant or problem that was emanating off the landscape in our specific estuary, we might be able to detect what was going on. But if we had something that was either across a whole region, like if we had some kind of a problem that emanated from the Gulf of Maine, for example, like some kind of pH related issue, let's say, some acidity, for example, that was emanating, a change in acidity that was emanating from the Gulf of Maine, we might be able to detect it in our individual estuaries. But if we didn't have comparable data, we wouldn't know if it was a regional impact, and we also wouldn't necessarily know if something was coming off the land and was a landward issue, or if something was coming off the sea and was a seaward issue. So, we decided that we needed to come together in an alliance of organizations. We call it MCOA, the Maine Coastal Observing Alliance, MCOA. It's probably the best thing I've been involved with ever in terms of community monitoring. I think one of the most wonderful things about having volunteers go out with their water monitoring gear, and they go out kind of to the same to the same locations, whether it's in a pond or a lake or the estuary, and they get to know those habitats really well, and they get to see the sort of natural changes that happen, and they become wonderful ambassadors for those places. And I think they talk about it. I know they talk about it with their friends, or at a cocktail party or whoever they are. But it's kind of an equalizer in a way. It's like they all get to know this place or the estuary really well, and it's something they have in common. It's very fulfilling for me to see people, they are able to gain skills very quickly, and produce a body of work in a short amount of time, which is super, it's fulfilling for me to watch, and to be able to provide certain tools for them to use, but then sort of let them make it their own.